The series begins in the year Universal Century 1, at the beginning of space colonization, when Laplace, the residential space station of the Federation's Prime Minister, is destroyed by an anti-Federation group during a ceremony hosted by the Prime Minister, ushering in the Universal Century era. We then fast forward to the year 0096, 16 years after the One-Year War, and 3 years after the events of Char's counterattack. The main story of the OVA revolves around a 16-year-old boy named Banadr Lynx, who seemed like a typical teenager who goes to school in the colonies. But that all changed when he met a young girl named Audrey Byrne and gets caught up in a conflict between the Federation's Lundo Bell and the Neo-Zeon remnant group known as the Sleeves, which is led by a masked man named Frontal, who bears a striking resemblance to the former leader of Neo-Zeon, Char Aznable. During the battle, Banadr discovers a mysterious white mobile suit with the horn of a unicorn. That mobile suit turned out to be the Unicorn Gundam, a powerful mobile suit cherished by the Vis Foundation that is said to hold a key to Laplace's box, which is an object that is highly sought after by both the Federation and Neo-Zeon, as it is rumored to hold a key to destroying the Earth Federation. Banadr ultimately becomes the pilot of the Gundam and uses it to fight off the Zeon remnants. After the battle, he would take refuge in the Lundo Bell ship Nahel Argama along with Audrey and 2 of his schoolmates. From that point on, it becomes an all-out battle between Lundo Bell and the Sleeves as they race to find Laplace's box and potentially change the tide of history. Gundam Unicorn was originally conceived as a light novel series in 2006 that was written by Harutoshi Fukui and at the time served as the swan song to the early Universal Century, at least until Gundam Narrative came along. The novel would eventually be turned into an OVA series that ran from 2010 to 2014 and was rebroadcasted as an anime series in 2016. This review will be based on the OVA version, which in my opinion is the definitive way to watch the series, as the TV version is basically a recut of the OVA that drags on for 22 episodes. Regarding the story itself, it took me a little while to get fully invested in it, but once I was, I found it to be a very enjoyable experience for the most part. All of the core ideas and themes of the past UC Gundam shows are present here and remain well executed thanks in large part to the directing skills of Kazuhiro Furuhashi. The pacing of the series was pretty good for the first 3 episodes. It wasn't too fast nor too slow, but I did think it started to have problems around episode 4, which was probably the reason the OVA was extended to 7 episodes instead of 6. I'm actually quite glad that the staff saw a problem with the series and ultimately did something about it, because if the series stayed at only 6 episodes, it would probably run into the same problems that plagued Gundam F91. Now regarding the characters, there are some that I really liked, but there were also some that annoyed me, especially Banadr. There is something about him at the start of the series that irritated me to no end. Going out and stealing a mobile worker to save Audrey's life is one thing, but to proceed to act like her knight in shining armor despite only hanging out with her for about an hour or so just comes off as bizarre and unnatural. You can make the argument that Banadr was experiencing the sensation Amuro felt when he first met Lala, though that's probably just a stretch. He does improve as the series went on like most Gundam pilots before him, and I ended up liking him in the end. He's not one of my favorite protagonists in Gundam, but he's also not a bad one either. Audrey was one of my favorite characters in the OVA, not because of her true identity, but because she came off as a very compassionate and intelligent girl that didn't show a whole lot of fear and was willing to do whatever she could for the good of Earth and space. Morita comes off as an emotionless soldier in the beginning. She saw herself as nothing more than a weapon that follows the orders of Captain Zinnerman, who she views as her master. But deep down, she is actually a good person who has had a troubled life, and even acts as a kind of mentor figure for Banagher. Zinnerman is a bitter old soldier who wants nothing more but to get revenge on the Federation for the death of his family, which would explain why he acts like a father figure to Marita. But upon meeting Banagher, he began to change his ways little by little. The Vists are some pretty shady people, but it seems like Martha is the only rotten apple in the family. The others all have their inner demons, but didn't come across as unredeemable people. Reddy is probably the most tragic character in the OVA. He has sheltered views about the world due to his upbringing, and unlike Banagher and Audrey, believes that the world should remain how it is now, and thinks that the Earth Federation will ultimately do the right thing, no matter how flawed they might be. This way of thinking caused him to deteriorate as the series went on, and he ultimately became filled with hate and rage. The last character I want to talk about is Frontal, the literal Char clone of the series. When he debuted in the second episode, I was super pumped about him, but then I stopped and thought if there was anything truly remarkable about him. I mean, he's basically Char. He has his looks, his voice, and the gimmick of wearing red outfits and piloting a red mobile suit. He might as well have been the actual Char. I think the thought process behind Frontal was to have a character that boasts a nostalgia factor for the viewers, while also being different in some way. Frontal may look like Char, but his thoughts appear to be distorted compared to the thoughts of the real Char. I also think his character was introduced as a way to finally solve the mystery of what exactly happened to Amuro and Char at the end of Char's counterattack. I would tell you the answer, but I think it's best to watch the OVA on your own to find out. Speaking of old characters, we also get to see the return of Bright Noah and Kai, and they are still as badass as ever. I guess all I have left to say in this segment is that if you are a big fan of the Universal Century era of Gundam, chances are you're going to enjoy the story. Hell, the whole OVA is like a love letter to the early UC timeline. An example of this would be the setting of the main battle of Episode 4, which is Torrington Base, the same base that served as the setting for the first couple of episodes in Stardust Memory. Now me personally, despite being a big fan of the UC Gundam shows, I didn't think Gundam Unicorn was the most mind-blowing show I'd seen in the franchise. The narrative was great, and the characters were engaging, but I think the story would have been more effective if it actually led to the end of all conflicts in Universal Century, and obviously that wasn't the case, especially since Gundam Narrative now exists. Still, I thought the story of Unicorn was solid enough. The visuals are absolutely breathtaking. Every single scene in this OVA is filled with magnificent detail. Yoshikazu Yasuhiko, the character designer for the original Gundam series, returns to design the characters in Unicorn, and they still look really damn good. Kotoki Hajime returns to design the mechs, and many of them look pretty badass. The Unicorn Gundam is an interesting design. At first, it resembles a plain white gym with a horn, but once it transforms into the familiar design that we are all used to, it becomes an absolute powerhouse of a mobile suit. The Sananju was a pretty awesome mobile suit as well. It may not have funnels like the Sazabi did, but it makes up for that by having all these sick melee weapons on it, as well as having a ludicrously huge upgrade later on. I wasn't big on the regular Banshee's design, but I did get a kick out of the Banshee Norn. The Delta Plus is like an awesome hybrid between the Zeta and the Hyaku Shiki. Just repaint it gold and you're all set. Some of the grunt units were pretty cool as well, such as the Rozelle, the Jesta, and the Stark Jagan. Probably one of my favorite aspects of the show was the large showcasing of mobile suits from across the UC timeline, particularly the suits that never got a chance to shine in the spotlight, like the Zaku 1 Sniper, the Gun Cannon Detector, the Aqua Gem, the Ifrit, and the Desert Gelgoog. The battles are explosive and have amazing choreography. I think this is the only Gundam series I've seen that can make battles against a bunch of unknown pilots that don't speak whatsoever incredibly entertaining to watch. All in all, Gundam Unicorn's presentation is simply outstanding. Every time I go back to this, I just smile at how gorgeous the whole thing looks. The music was amazing. I enjoyed all the scores in the series. My personal favorite score was probably the orchestra version of Beginning that plays in the final episode. I also enjoyed all of the ending themes, with my favorites being Merry-Go-Round, Broken Mirror, and Star Ring Child. All in all, not much to say other than this is a fantastic soundtrack. The voice acting was pretty good for both languages. For the Japanese version, we have Koki Uchiyama voicing Banagher, and he is known for the role of Roxas in the Kingdom Hearts games. Daisuke Namikawa voices Riddy, and he previously voiced characters such as Leonard from Fullmetal Panic, Rock from Black Lagoon, and the protagonist from Persona 4. Since Bright's original seiyuu, Hirotaka Suzuki, passed away in 2006, Ken Narita would take over his various roles, which included Bright Noah, and he does a fantastic job voicing him in this series. And of course we have Shuichi Ikeda naturally voicing Full Frontal. The English dub was really solid. Steve Staley voices Banagher, and he previously voiced Seabook from F91, Shiro from the 8th MS team, and also provided the voice for Neji from Naruto. Marita is voiced by Tara Platt. I think that's how you pronounce it. Anyway, she voiced Tamari from Naruto, Reina from Rave Master, and Mitsuru from Persona 3. Funny enough, Yuri Lowenthal, who is Platt's husband, voices Riddy, and he is known for voicing a bunch of characters, such as Simone from Gurren Lagann. Keith Silverstein voices Full Frontal, and he would ultimately go on to voice Char in the Origin OVAs. Overall, regardless of which version of the OVA you watch, you're guaranteed solid performances all around. If you are a big fan of the Universal Century, specifically the stories ranging from the original Gundam series to Char's Counterattack, you'll most likely enjoy what Gundam Unicorn has to offer, and even if you're not big into the UC, I still say give it a chance, because I do know friends who aren't big into shows like the original or Zeta, but still find enjoyment in Unicorn. Me personally, while I did like it in the end, I did find it to be rather overrated and overhyped. Not saying that makes the show bad, all I'm basically saying is it's not as amazing as people make it out to be. Now, can this be a good starting point for people to get into Gundam? Probably. I personally think the show requires you to at least have prior knowledge to the original series and Char's Counterattack, but it also wouldn't hurt to try this series out first, then go back and watch the older UC shows to see how it all ends up at this point. Ultimately, the OVA took around 4 years to complete, but I think the wait was totally worth it to have a quality series. Final score, 8 out of 10.